have a heart-to-heart and talk about celibacy. So celibacy is something that in the West is demonized. Very demonized. You have religion that doesn't honor celibacy anymore. You have non-religion that looks at religion's celibacy origins and retaliates all the way. And then you have the few that actually know in the West the power of celibacy and abstinence. The very few. So this power is an astral power that will allow you access to a certain level of sovereignty in this realm that no matter almost what anyone does, they won't be able to access it because they don't have the what is called the ujas to bring up into the brain and access a certain level of sovereignty. So, Baba Rave, what is the heart-to-heart with this? Well, the heart-to-heart is that, yes, I am promoting celibacy and abstinence until a certain level of the royal sexual kung fu is developed. And even when it's developed, well, there's levels to that development. Because you have to get to a level with that royal sexual kung fu where you can actually attract a being of the same moral virtues that you can actually practice that sexual kung fu with, of the opposite sex, right? Or of the same sex. But, let's just speak generally of the opposite sex. And then you get to practice that sexual kung fu on a basis that is royal because you know when to practice it. So sexual kung fu still doesn't give you the accessibility to not be celibate. Celibacy is what you first develop so that you can actually learn the Taoist yoga, the sexual kung fu, to actually be able to see the difference of having the ujas and not having the ujas before you even create your dantians, right? And then you refine them. And then you have the periods of the month, literally the period of the month that governs when you actually practice the sexual kung fu with your partner. What seasons do you practice it more? What seasons do you practice it less? And are you actually still spilling the seminal fluid in the right amount? Or are you not spilling it and being able to have love making sessions where you don't even edge? You know what I mean? That's the whole goal, is to get to a point where you can actually have love making sections where you don't even edge. You share that bond with your partner and you only orgasm to a specific amount each season, per month each season, which is a specific amount per year. And so, yes, abstinence, brahmacharya, celibacy is a very important tool that definitely in the West, this is like my heart-to-heart for real right now, definitely in the West, we are poisoned with sexual immaturity from the young age. I mean, how many of us were born from lust, right? So I know that, and I know that's most of us, because we're not born into becoming spiritual beings. Most of us, our parents might have had some type of recognition of what it might take to create a spiritual child, but they don't know exactly how to do that. They still make the child from lust. And so in the West specifically, in the East, there's their own thing that they got going on as well that has penetrated into the West, and people with money and influence have brought the penetrative natures of the confusion of the East into the West, so that they can continue being sexually poisoned, the beings of the West, right? And so me being one of those beings of the West, heart to heart, knowing that you are too, as we speak in this English language, we get to see that, you know, like 90% of the global problems on Earth are due to people not knowing how to transform celibacy and abstinence into a sexual kung fu, into a royal sexual kung fu. All right. And this is why the masters a lot of the times would only give the students a certain amount. They would gatekeep until they put the pieces of the puzzle together, and then they would manifest some sort of royalty. Now, remember when I say royalty, that all of the 24 elders and the rishis and the Buddhas, they were all part of royal lineages. They managed a lot of minds, and which are resources. Minds are resources. This is why they want to manage your mind by polluting you with sexuality. Speaking about the government, right? Because the governments aren't full of Buddhas, right? This is why they want your mind as one of their resources, because it gives them more power. The more resources, the more power that you manage, or just have some subtle control over, the more power you have. And so you can actually see that, becoming enlightened is a royal thing. And not even just enlightenment, but just being of a being that is going to take one step for the future evolution of humanity is a royal thing. Like, you have to step into that royalty bag. So celibacy and abstinence is literally a royal thing. To be able to move your ujas and not see men or women, mainly this is a man thing, because we leak most of our jing, our natural body's essence, out of our... We have to, like, women can't be like, oh, I'm gonna have like 5 menstruations this month. They can have one big one, but they can't have 5. Men, we can have multiple menstruations a day. So we can leak so much of our jing out of, through that menstruation, And so this is a royal thing for men to get into, and understand that, like, the leakage of your royalty is in your celibacy, in your abstinence, in your brahmacharya, is in your ability to restrain yourself over time into intelligence. All right. This is not to restrain yourself into slavery, but to restrain yourself into intelligence. This is a discipline that brings you a certain level of, like, gnosis of what this realm really is all about, the polar opposites of this realm, and how to actually grow your sovereignty in this realm. And so, like, I know for a man in the West, it's hard to even say, I'm celibate, I'm brahmachari, I'm a restrainty, I'm a sannyasi, I'm a renouncee, I'm a, abstinency. It's hard for us to say those things because we literally weigh all of our self-worth and value on the amount of women that we can, penetrate, and try to act as if we are owning, like Monopoly, owning their resources. Right? So to be able to flip the switch and get into, like, no, that's what slaves do, and flip the switch into what royal people do, is we practice the celibacy and abstinence, especially at times when we're supposed to be charging up our ujas in those seasons, or in those moon cycle those mini moon cycle timings when we're supposed to be charging those things up, we do that celibacy and abstinence, and we go into that brahmachari mode, and we get those royalties of the ujas into the brain. You know, it's literally very similar to the Taoist alchemy or the Taoist yoga, where you're refining the jing into shin, refining the jing into qi into shin, and you know, being able to have enough yin of those jing, qi, shin, so that you can actually move the yang through those and actually refine. But if you don't have the ujas or the yin to actually create that round table for the alchemy to happen, then, you know, we don't ever get to our royalty, and we don't ever actually get to being like, yeah, the goal here is to create these spiritual children on earth so that there's less children needed, and so there's endless amounts of abundance that can be seen from each child. Because it's like all these little crack babies and pill babies are like 100 of them equal, or 1,000 of them equal, you know, one just normal child, and then 1,000 of those normal childs equal one spiritual child. So, you know, it's not like this earth is ever really not abundant regardless. It's just that the cultivation of the earth moving from the third dimension to the fourth dimension, from the solar plexus level of understanding sexual and emotional immaturity to overstanding sexual emotional immaturity, you know, that's just what's happening here. So when you leave a footnote on that's the path for the men right now, and you can proclaim it on a daily basis to all the men, and you can have those conversations with men, you know, you put yourself in a sainthood of royalty, that you can actually create the same energy that you want to create when you're like, you know, polluting a woman with your sexual pollutions. You can also do that on the other side of the script, do that with men, and talk to men about how to gain their royalties through their ujas, and then through their yang qi and their yang shin. All right. And yeah, what the leakages are at and what they're hitting for along the way, and then just being able to help the women have that sense of protection, that they don't have to be in that realm, that lust realm. And so yeah, it's one of those things that we just have to have that conversation for what it truly is, and not have any of these like, but I'm trying to liberate my sex. It's like, you liberate your sex, but you're only liberating your 6 ether force, your 6 ether force. You're not going to liberate your 9 ether force. So do you really want to just liberate the beast, or do you want to liberate, which is remember, the beast is the yeast most of the time. For most people, the beast is the yeast. I love that saying. Or do you want to liberate your 9, your 720 degrees of spiritual intelligence, of soulful intelligence? You know what I mean? It's up to you. Depends on what realm you're really living in. But it's going to take those royalties to be able to meet the crown for what it truly is available for. So I just wanted to drop in with that and say that this is the conversation to be had with as much people as possible, with as much men as possible, with as much women as possible that are looking to like understand their heart and where their heart has been tampered. Because a lot of times when we get women into sexual misalignments and throw sexual pollution into women, it tampers their heart, and they leak out of their heart rather than men leaking out of their lower dantian, their womb space. Women, they also leak out of their womb space, but it's a accumulation of their heart throughout the menstrual cycle, which is actually leaking out of their womb space. So yeah, create the royalties. That's all that this is really about. So thank you so much, beloveds, for having this heart to heart with me, and looking forward to more praises and cheers. Y'all know what it is. Divine Ashe, divine love.